One, in Pali, Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vaca, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Samadhi. The Noble Eightfold Path is the heart of Buddhism, heart of the Buddha stating. Nobody before Buddha has ever discovered this Eightfold Path. Only one, the first one to discover this Noble Eightfold Path. Noble Eightfold Path is so important that if any Buddhist, anybody who wants to liberate from samsaric suffering, they definitely must follow the Noble Eightfold Path. Out of them, as I mentioned, number one is right view. Right view or the right understanding has been explained by Venerable Sariputta in 16 ways. 16 ways. And I don't think we have enough time to explain all of them in detail, but I can run over all this in brief. One day, when Venerable Sariputta was living in Savatthi, in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika is parked. There, Venerable Sariputta addressed the bhikkhus thus: Friends, bhikkhus. Friends, they replied. The Venerable Sariputta said this: one of right view is said. Friends, in what way is the noble disciple one of right view, whose view is straight, who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma? His arriving at true Dhamma means the supramundane attainment. So when Venerable Sariputta asked this question, these monks said, indeed, when we would come from far away to learn from the Venerable Sariputta the meaning of this statement. It would be good if the Venerable Sariputta would explain the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the bhikkhus will remember. Then Venerable Sariputta said, number one, out of these 16 ways, if one understands the number one, that alone is enough for the person to be liberated from samsaric suffering. What is number one? Knowing wholesome and unwholesome. Knowing what is wholesome and unwholesome. When friends and noble disciples understand the unwholesome and root of unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of wholesome, in that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So, number one is understanding wholesome and unwholesome. And the root of wholesome, unwholesome, and the root of wholesome. Now, unwholesome has its own roots. Wholesome has its own roots. Understanding of these two, wholesome and unwholesome, and their roots, then that person's view is right view, whose view is straight, who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived this true Dhamma. Then, when the Sariputta says, and what friend is the unwholesome and what is the root of unwholesome? What is the wholesome and what is the root of wholesome? Now, this is very famous, basic principles of ethical life. That is, killing living being is unwholesome. Killing living beings doesn't mean killing only human beings. Killing any living being is unwholesome. Akusala, in Pali, akusala. And what is the root of also the taking what is not given is unwholesome. We all know adinadana veramani, adinadana. Taking what is not given is unwholesome. Misconduct in sensual pleasures is unwholesome. Kamesu mithyachara is unwholesome. False speech is unwholesome. Malicious speech is unwholesome. Harsh speech is unwholesome. Gossip is unwholesome. Covetousness is unwholesome. Ill will is unwholesome. Wrong view is unwholesome. This is called the unwholesome. Now, this much one must understand very clearly, perfectly. And then what is the root of the unwholesome? It is understandable. Root of unwholesome is greed. Greed is the root of the unwholesome. Hatred is the root of the unwholesome. Delusion is the root of the unwholesome. That is lobha, dosa, moha in Pali. These are the roots of unwholesome. Now, if one understands this, first what is unwholesome, and then their roots, understanding them, it in itself is right understanding. Now, then, what is the wholesome? Abstaining from killing is wholesome. Abstaining from stealing is wholesome. Abstaining from sexual misconduct is wholesome. Abstaining from false speech is wholesome. Abstaining from malicious speech is wholesome. Abstaining from harsh speech is wholesome. Abstaining from gossip is wholesome. Abstaining is and uncovetousness is wholesome. Non-ill will is wholesome. Right view is wholesome. Now, when we talk about wholesome, what does the wholesome do? Wholesome clean the mind. Unwholesome defile the mind. The mind in itself is luminous. This luminous mind can be either polluted or keep it remain luminous. When these unwholesome roots arise in the mind definitely become polluted. If we abstain from these unwholesome roots, then mind remains luminous and clean. And what is the root of wholesome? Non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Non-greed means alobha, adosa, amoha. No greed, no hatred, no greed means, non-greed means generosity, letting go. Non-hatred means metta, loving kindness. And non-delusion is right understanding. Now, this is the passage very important to understand. When a noble disciple has thus understood the unwholesome and the root of unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of wholesome, he entirely he abandons the underlying tendency to lust. That is kama-sava, underlying tendency to abolish the underlying tendency to aversion. Then patigha-sava, he expiates the underlying tendency to the view, ditta-sava, and conceit, I am, mananusaya. By abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge and here and now, makes an end of suffering. You see, if one understands these things very clearly, holds unwholesome as unwholesome and their root, wholesome as wholesome and their root. When one understands what one does, one abstain from these unwholesome roots and cultivate wholesome roots. And then wholesome, he entirely abandoned the underlying tendency to lust. So that there are tendencies, underlying tendencies, which are called asava. Asava in Pali and Sanskrit is called the something that is brewed. You know, in Ayurvedic medicine, there is you take various kind of roots, nuts, and so forth, and put in, bury in the ground for a while, and then after, sometimes it's fermented. When it is fermented, you make beer, for instance. You take various things and brew it. After brewing for a long time, you use it, then that gives you a kick. Similarly, this underlying tendencies brewed in samsara. In many, many previous lives, we nourished them, nourished the root, and brewed them. And therefore, they remain very strong in our mind as underlying tendencies. And then, for instance, underlying tendency to lust, underlying tendency to what you call tendency to aversion, underlying tendency to the wrong view, and conceit, I am, man. And if we understand them very clearly, we know that they always brings us suffering. We abandon ignorance and arousing true knowledge in here abandoning ignorance. Because of ignorance, all this, wherever the underlying tendency is there is ignorance. Even in this discourse, the explanation at the end, you see, avidya samudaya, asava samudaya. Avidya nirodha, asava nirodha. Asava samudaya, avidya samudaya. Asava nirodha, avidya nirodha. That is, when the tendency, underlying tendency arises, it arises because of ignorance. Ignorance. And therefore, one would understand this very clearly, and then he, here and now, makes an suffering. If we understand this very clearly, we can end of suffering. That is again in Nibbana. So, when you look at this right view, it has been explained, as I said, in 16 ways. If we understand even number one, that alone is enough for us to liberate from samsaric suffering. In that way, too, noble disciples is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma. Unwavering confidence in the Dhamma, you can have when you attend the stream entry. From that time you have unshakable, unwavering confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And he has arrived at the true Dhamma, that is Supramundane Dhamma. Now, this is one way of understanding right view, right understanding. And the second is, Venerable Sariputta said, noble disciples, these monks prompted Venerable Sariputta and asked him, is there any other way? They were not satisfied with the first one. And they prompted him, asked him again, is there any other way of other way to understand rightly? Then, but friend, they said, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view? Then Venerable Sariputta said, when friend and noble disciple understand nourishment, nutriment, origin of nutriment, cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to cessation of nutriment. Now, Venerable Sariputta combine the Four Noble Truths with the dependent origination. He combined the Four Noble Truths with dependent origination. In the Four Noble Truth has the suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, path leading to the end of suffering. And that is the pattern Venerable Sariputta used to explain the next step of the right view. That is nutriment. Nutriment. It is like suffering. And arising of nutriment, cause of suffering. And cessation of nutriment, cessation of suffering. And the way under the leading to the cessation of suffering. That is path leading to the end of suffering. Leading to the cessation of nutriment is equivalent to the path leading to the cessation of suffering. In that way, he is one of right view. You see, then what is nutriment? And nutriment is original nutriment. What is the cessation of nutriment? What is the way leading to cessation of nutriment? There are four kinds of nutriments. Four kinds of nutriments. For maintenance of being that already have come to be. And for the support of those about to come to be. Now, those who have lived, those who are born, for their maintenance, there must be nutriment. And also those who are coming into being, come into existence, they have not come into existence yet, but they are in the state of, in the process of becoming, coming into being, also need nutriment. For instance, when the embryo is in the mother's womb, that embryo needs nutriment. And when the embryo is grown and born as a baby and then so forth, that individual, boy or girl, needs nutriment to live. And there are four kinds of nutrients for the maintenance and so forth. What for? There are physical food as nutriment, gross or subtle. That is called Kabalinkara ahar. Kabalinkara means making into lumps, or it is gross, that food. We eat all kind of foods, starch and so forth. Then the second kind of nutriment is contact as the second, mental volition as the third, and consciousness is the fourth. So, we all know this. Contact is a nutriment. Contact is a nutriment for the feelings. Feeling is the nutriment for desire, and so forth. Desire is the nutriment for clinging. Clinging is a nutriment for craving, clinging. And clinging is a nutriment for becoming. Becoming is a nutriment for birth, decay, death, sorrow, lamentation, and so forth. Therefore, contact itself is a nutriment. It's a very profound teaching. Mental volition as the third. Chetana. Mental volition means chetana, means karma. Karma is a nutriment for rebirth. Third. And the consciousness as the fourth. Now, none of these things becomes nutriments without consciousness. Vijnana, Patisandhi Vijnana, Chuti, Chitta, Chuti, Vijnana. This consciousness is a nutriment for nourishing, continuing the life. So, with the arising of craving, there is arising of nutriment. Now, first he put the nutriment, as I said, like Four Noble Truth. Number one is in the Four Noble Truth formula is suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, path leading to the end of suffering. He followed the same formula. He said arising of craving is arising of nutriment. With the cessation of craving, there is a cessation of nutriment. The way leading to cessation of nutriment is just this noble eightfold path. Is it for suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, path leading to the end of suffering. So, to end suffering, this we follow the noble eightfold path. Similarly, nutriments, cause of nutriments, end of nutriments, and the path leading to the end of nutriments. What is the path that leads to the end of nutriment? It's the same noble eightfold path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And when the Sariputta says, when the noble disciple has thus understood nutriment, the origin of nutriment, the cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to cessation of nutriment, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to greed. Use the same formula. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing the true knowledge he here and now makes an end of suffering. Now this is the second way of understanding right view, or having second step, second method of understanding right view. I said he explained right view in 16 ways. This is second way, understanding nutriment. Third way itself is Four Noble Truth. We understand Four Noble Truth, Four Noble Truth. That is right understanding. Many people know only this much. Whenever you ask what is the right understanding, their understanding of the Four Noble Truth is right understanding. That is the most popular way. But in addition to that, we discuss two steps before this. Understanding Four Noble Truth is very popular statement. That is when friends, noble disciples understand suffering, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the way to suffering. And then when the Sariputta explained what is suffering, I think we all know this, what suffering is. What is suffering? Okay. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Birth is suffering. Sometimes people say birth is suffering to the mother. But not only to the mother, but the baby who is born, birth is suffering to the baby. How the baby is suffering? That suffering does not end just at birth. Because when the baby, we all are born, not with a smile, not with smile. Maybe one out of thousands might be born without cry. We all are born with cry. It is so difficult. Why do we cry? The first cry may not last too long. But after that, this cry is smoldering. It is not very loudly heard, but very silent cry. We all cry for so many gallons of milk, so many pounds of sugar, starch, nutrients, clothes, schools, books, vehicles, computers, and so many things we cry for. Even now, we cry, but other people don't hear that. But the cry is going on within ourselves all the time until we die. And therefore, the birth brings this suffering. We keep crying. And therefore, birth is suffering to mother as well as the one who is born, like all of us. Then, sickness is suffering. Needless to say, when we are sick, we suffer. Death is suffering. Friends, it is very painful, even the thought of death is suffering. And then after that, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair is suffering. And then, not to obtain what one wants is suffering. Now, we want so many things. Do we get them? No. Not to get what we want is suffering. Then one might say, well, if we get what we want, then be happiness. Not to get what one wants is suffering, and therefore one might think logically, well, if we get what we want, we may be happy. Is it true? No. Even to get what we want is suffering. Why? Because that is not permanent. That is not permanent. And therefore, not to get what one wants, these are two tragedies in life. Not to get what one wants and to get what one wants. And therefore, then, in short, the five aggregates affected by clicking are suffering. Five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, thought, and consciousness are the five aggregates. Maintaining these aggregates themselves is suffering. We have to maintain our form, our feeling, perception, thought, and consciousness. I think many people don't like to even hear that. And yet that is the truth. And therefore, five aggregate suffering. And what is the origin of suffering? It is craving, which brings renewed of being, is accompanied by the delight and lust, and delights in this and that is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for beings, craving for non-beings. This is the cause of suffering. Now, friends, craving, many people think desire, or we call craving or desire. Can we live without desire? Normally we cannot. We have to desire for food, clothes, medicine, shelter, and various things we desire. And there is a desire, two kinds of desires. One is perpetual desire, and the other is desire to be desireless. desire to be desireless is wholesome desire. Desire to continue desire is unwholesome desire. And it is this desire which brings renewal of beings. Is accompanied by delight and lust. Pono bhavika nandi raga sahagata. Pono bhavika means repeating. Nandi means desire, delight. Raga means lust. So, and this and that. Tatra Vinandini. We delight in this, and after that it fades away because of impermanence. Then we delight something else. Then it fades away, then we look for something else. Because the desire itself is not permanent. Desire itself is impermanent. And therefore, desire has no limit. And then we have to renew it. Craving for being, bhavatanna, craving for non-being. Craving for being is we live in this life looking for various things, and we cannot fulfill all of them. For instance, we do all sorts of things to make us happy, and one day we stop and ask you, are you happy? You might say, not yet. Then you wait for another few years and ask, are you happy? Then you may answer, not yet. And then with this not yet happiness, we pass away, wishing to have them in the next life. And that's called craving for being. Craving for non-being is we have gone through all kinds of suffering, and then finally we think enough. One life is enough. I don't want any more life. This is enough. And Buddha said, by so wishing it, you cannot stop it. And Buddha said in Satipatthana Sutta, Jati dhammanam bhikkhave sattana evam iccha uppajjati. Aho vatamayam jati dhamma asama. Nacha vatano jatin agacchayasi. Nakopaneta iccha pattabha. Being subject to birth, may wish, may I not be born again. By so wishing, you cannot stop it. You will be reborn again. Why is that? Because you have laid the foundation, planted the seed, you have desire. And since you have desire, whether you like it or not, you will be reborn again. And therefore, even though you don't like to be born, that's called not to be born, reborn again is called vibhavatanna. Vibhavatanna. Bhava means becoming, vibhava means not becoming. Craving, not to be born, but it will not happen. It will happen to us. And then that is the cause of suffering. And the third is the cessation of suffering, we all know. When it is the remainderless fading away. Eva tasma asayesu viraja nirodha. When the craving is destroyed without any residue left, that is called attaining full liberation, enlightenment, Nibbana. Realizing Nibbana. You see, understanding Nibbana logically, rationally is one thing, but that alone is not Nibbana. But realizing it in our life, we must realize Nibbana. Only then can we end our suffering. And the same thing, the path leading to the end of suffering is the same, Noble Eightfold Path. This is number 4. We mentioned number 4. Four steps of understanding, right view. And then next is aging and death. So noble disciples understand aging and death, the origin of aging and death, cessation of aging and death, the relative to the cessation of aging and death. Now aging and death is one step to the dependent origination, and it follows the same Four Noble Truth formula. Understanding the aging is one thing, aging and death. That is number 1. Number 2, in the Four Noble Truth, origin of aging and death. Number 3, cessation of aging and death. Number 4, the path leading to the cessation of aging and death. So, what is the aging and death? What is the origin of aging and death? What is cessation of aging and death? What is the path leading to the aging and death? The aging of beings in the various orders of beings. Their old age, brokenness of teeth, grayness of hair, wrinkling of skins, and decline of life, weakness of faculties. That is called aging. Have you had any of them? I have all of them. So I can tell you with personal experience. And this happens to everybody. If they live long enough, all these things will happen to all of them. And then aging, various orders of beings, they are passing away, death, dissolution, disappearance, declining of dying, completion of time, dissolution of the aggregates, lying down of the body, that is called death. We don't have to explain what death is. Once you are dead, you understand what it is. And then sorrow, lamentation, and so forth. All these are the results. And when the Bhante said, if one understands what is the arising of birth, the arising aging and sorrow. With the cessation of birth, there is cessation of aging and death, and the very leading cessation of death is just a Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, so when the Sariputta, when a noble disciple has thus understood the aging and death, origin of aging and death, cessation of aging and death, and the very leading cessation of aging and death, he in this very life comes to an end of suffering and attain liberation. Now that next is birth. As I said, Venerable Sariputta follows the pattern of the dependent origination, combine it with the Four Noble Truths. And therefore, friends, I don't think we have time to explain all of them. In the past, I have given 16 talks on this right view, right understanding, taking each of them separately. And today in this retreat, I don't have that much time. For this much, for today is enough. And I wish you all have a very wonderful day.